per acompanyar-nos avui. Els he dit que era una trobada informal amb la premsa i ara em deien això no té massa pinta d'informal. Però bueno, estem en família en qualsevol cas. I jo avui no parlaré gaire, el protagonisme és d'ells dos. Ja sabeu que completem amb aquest concert un any i escaig que hem dedicat en part també a la música de Thomas Adès. Hem pogut escoltar els 3 estudis de Couperin i també In 7 Days l'any passat, i enguany farem aquesta estrena, una estrena esperada per nosaltres perquè forma part d'un coencàrrec, ho teniu tota la nota de premsa, una estrena que a més van realitzar el mateix Pekka i el Thomas Adès dirigint a Helsinki la setmana passada. And I won't be talking so much unless they ask me to. Basically, I want them to be talking to you, to be asking you questions, and as I said, it's an informal. Sometimes when there's less people, we do it there, but today we just found this format. So please feel free to start the conversation. I just explained to them that you had the premiere last week. I hope that went well. Any feedback from that? Any first impressions?
It went very well.
I think so.
Pekka was brilliant.
So was no, the Finnish Radio Symphony, I think, have played quite a lot of your music.
Yes, they have over the years.
I've played the violin concerto with them at least twice, like in 2 different projects.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I was pleased because it's the first time I've heard it as well. And I think the main thing was we could hear Pekka all the way through without him having to break a string. You know, so I did my job in the orchestration. Okay. And he just was brilliant, being a national hero of Finland. Definitely helped me with the audience.
Yeah, we're very glad to have you here performing this piece. I was talking to Pekka before, and he was here a long time ago, no? With Ernest Martinez Izquierdo. That was...
Yes, that's 12 years ago. But I did something at chamber music concert.
Yeah, we have you in chamber music season.
But yeah, it's been a long time. But the memories are good.
And we only just premiered the piano version of this piece in Paris less than a month ago. That was the one that, because of COVID, was much later, like 18 months later. So there was supposed to be a big gap. But instead, we came straight from that into these performances, which actually in some ways makes life easier, I guess, because it stays in the mind and in the fingers.
So this is going to be the second performance?
Yes, of this version.
Yes. And then, well, obviously the third of the, counting the piano version.
Yes,
no?
yes. And then you're making a record of it, aren't you?
Yeah, we recorded it in Finland, but I'm actually playing it next week in Gothenburg, in Sweden, with somebody else conducting, which will be very interesting. But it's also a good one, so it's going to be fun.
Yes, it will be good. Interesting to see that the third movement is particularly, like a friend of ours described it as like a conductor's concerto, because I have to sort of be quite quick following what he's doing. And it's really fun, actually. It's not like anything else I've done.
Conductor's concerto. Sounds interesting.
I gave myself quite a challenge there.
And you're going to be playing it in other places also, no?
Yes.
This is not the end of the tour, is it?
Yeah, no. The piece will happen here and there for hopefully a very, very, very long time into the future. I'm sure. I can't quite remember exactly now what's happening.
I'm not sure if we're allowed to mention the next summer, but there are plans for next summer as well.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but the recording, there's going to be a recording on a label called Ondine, which will contain the Finnish Radio Symphony and Nick Collin and me performing a bunch of Tom's music. Yeah. I think is the Hotel Suite.
Yes, the same piece we're doing here, the Powder Her Face, and also my cello, little concertino, Euro Troupe, the first time that's been recorded with orchestra, all with the Finnish radio.
Oh, nice.
And Nick, their new chief conductor, and so that's exciting.
Very exciting.
He's done a lot of my music with them as well, more maybe even as much as I have. So they kind of met doing a piece of mine in 7 days. That's when they old, that's when they kind of fell in love with doing my piece. So that's nice.
Nice. We had in 7 days last season here,
super.
and 3 pieces of Couperin also. And you are going to be performing next week also with Ian Bostridge.
Yes, Winterreise. Yes, that's right.
Winterreise. And so that's going to be a full week of. You're going to be performing actually in the Chamber Music Hall where you performed like 3 or 4 years ago. I think it was with Lockenhaus, was it?
It was one of those, yes.
With Alsted.
Alexander Longwish and
yes.
company. Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, so I don't know if you want. I wanted to give the words to the journalists. Just have a little chat with.
I'd love you to describe for people what artists are they going to be. And I would also like know about the violin part specifically. How do you feel with this concert? How is the violin part? A little bit of description of the general concert and the final.
Well, I'll start with the piece Mesh and Tensor, of course, means dances from fairy tales. All the ideas, the material in the piece. I was very heavily immersed in English, British folk songs, folk tunes. I listened to dozens of them, and really, the ones that stuck in my head, I then made a collage and worked them out into my own music. So it's very heavily. You would hear a lot of snatches, little bits of folk tunes, and in some cases the entire song all the way through. And I've put them, juxtaposed them, and I've done things, woven them into a kind of fabric. So it's a kind of pop music as well. And the third movement, in particular, in the piano version, is solo violin a cappella, right till the very end. There are 2 notes on the piano. And in this version, it's a bird song, but I've used a folk song to make the bird song, Skylark. And in the orchestra version, he's joined by hundreds of extra skylarks, cued by me. So that's my side of it. And I mean, Becca, I believe I'm right in saying you play folk material. So you're.
I do. I've been playing not only Finnish and Scandinavian, but also English, Scottish, Irish folk music for quite a long time. So it's a very natural entrance for me into the world of this piece. Of course, the violin part is much more difficult than what I come across in traditional music.
I mean, I wonder if you wrote down some of what those players actually do,
right,
it might look just as difficult. Do you know what I mean? If you came at it from that direction.
Exactly. Yeah. There is a famous research done about Karelian traditional singing, where a lot of they've recorded singers from a long time ago and who are passing on these traditions, and it goes kind of into not quarter tones but eighth tones. Yes. And of course the performers don't think about eighth tones. They just sing it the way they feel it. But when you sort of immortalize it onto paper, it starts to look very complicated. I thought, like, when the piece came to be, there is sort of a shortage maybe of works of this depth, but also of this kind of compact size. I think the overture, concerto, symphony regular shape of a concert has made it a little bit difficult for violinists to get to program pieces that are less than 24 minutes long.
I'm often shocked now how long traditional violin concertos are. They're always longer than I remember them being.
It's a marathon.
Yes. And I like a sort of, it's like a little pop album, one side of an album or something.
An EP.
An EP, yes, it is.
Yeah, and I think a piece like this with such a, I think people will find it quite magnetic, and I'm really looking forward to opportunities of programming, figuring out ways of programming it in the future, together with, well, last week we played Francisco Coll
Yes.
together with it, another shortish piece, or like 15-minute piece for violin and orchestra.
Yes,
Next week I'm doing it together with Lark Ascending.
Yes, lovely. Yes.
And there will be some concerts with some Sibelius, serenades with it. So these
that's
kind of
perfect.
things.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think with anything with folk material, what fascinates me is how deep you can kind of go into the idea, even just with a couple of little bars of it, because these things have such deep roots in kind of the human mind or whatever. So you can get quite a long way into things very quickly.
I think you're right. Like one of my favorite examples of this is Sibelius Concerto, one of the most kind of well-known, it's not used exactly in car commercials, but it's used as a jingle in Finland. There's a folk tune, and then you meet the Sibelius Concerto. It's yom bum bum bradum bum bum bradum bum 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 bum, and immediately you feel it's such a simple tune, but you feel that it's coming from
deep. Well, I mean, there's a composer who, in one moment, 1 second, he can transport you to a realm of distant legend. Just one sound.
Exactly. Yeah. But having said all of that, and coming back to Tom's piece, it's a fantastic adventure to play it. A lot happens in a very short time, especially in the first and the fourth movement. It is really kind of, sometimes when something is really scary and it makes you laugh, like a roller coaster.
That's good. Well, that's very much a fairy tale, a feature of fairy tales as well. That they can be terrifying and funny and kind of exciting. And then you can sometimes think, you get into it and they say, and then she met the wolf or whatever, and suddenly you're in this situation where it's like, how do we get out of this? And then, so you can't wait to get out of it. So that's rather, I tried to do that, weave you into a spell in the piece and get you out of it very quickly.
Yeah.
Maybe you can explain us how it works with you, the inspiration, what's the impulse you receive in order to write?
I really don't, in some ways it's to do with getting yourself into something which you then have to get out of, like a kind of Houdini situation. So I would say, even just looking at the ideas, the folk songs, I suddenly think, I have to get myself out of this. I think that's any artist's inspiration can be from odd places, but it really is you have to make the piece in order to kind of be free of it. Like a spell, like a fairy tale. Yeah. So, it's obsession. I get obsessed with an idea and I have to make it mine in some way.
Contemporary music is always put it aside, maybe in the middle, or within the programs. How do you feel treated in the auditoriums, in the music halls all over Europe or the world?
I kind of I see them all as one thing. I wouldn't say this because there's like a contemporary music, lounge that's got a different key. I think it's all in one place. So if it needs to be at the end of the program, then that's where I'll put it. It's never crossed my mind really. I think trust is important with the audiences as well. You just sort of have to say, trust me on this one.
First contact with the National Orchestra.
We're all learning each other's languages very quickly. Yeah. Already, it's exciting when the second time, the third time, there's suddenly you can feel that they can speak the language really well.
How do you think in this present in Barcelona you're going to be the performer, the conductor, and the composer? How do you manage to be in all these places?
when I'm a conductor, I really have to just be a good traffic policeman for the orchestra. Yeah.
And when is someone else
Who's conducting your piece? What's do you? I mean, you make him feel free, or how it works?
Yes, you know. I mean, there's this, they'll be following the score, and I'm shy, so I'm always happier on the podium because the audience is behind me, and so I prefer to be there than in the audience. Okay.
What do you do? Because sometimes it happens that you try to communicate things, but your orchestra doesn't get there.
Well, that is my job, is to convey the idea in a way that they get and is compelling and is effective. That is part of the job. It's not their fault if they don't understand what I've said. So that's my fault.
More conductors should think like that.
I think they'd find their job easier if they could, communicate clearly.
And when you did the premiere in the piano version, I guess you were in the piano, no? You were together playing it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and that was, as a composer, of course, it's you can make much more colors and perspective with orchestra than maybe you could always in a piano. There's a lot, isn't there? It's quite different. You said it was quite different playing it with the piano and the orchestra.
Very, 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 yeah. Already just because of the distances between. Then, especially here, because the orchestra still has to sit partly quite far away from each other. Just the, the ending whack of the first movement.
Yeah.
With the piano, it comes from 2
Yeah.
meters away,
Boom.
and here it comes from the bass drum.
Right at the back.
Just,
Yes.
10 meters, 15 meters.
Yeah, it's a different thing. But it does mean that we can possibly hear you and him much more clearly when he's that far away.
Yeah.
There's always advantage.
Yeah, and there's different sides to it. It's actually really fun to try to adjust to it as quickly. It's very nice.
I think that sounds like a bit of my piece, but
Yeah.
maybe someone playing on the drum.
Oh yeah, that's the ending of the first movement. Yeah, totally.
Tell us also, please, about your collaboration.
With Ian Bostridge and the Winterreise, how you used to work together.
Yeah, well, we ordered it together. We toured it at one point, and this is actually a return to it after a few years. It's been good. He's had a quieter couple, of course, like we all did last year. So it's going to be very nice to come back to it after that time. It'll be, I think we'll have a different perspective on it.
Sure, after the pandemic, everyone has a different perspective, no?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you think that is your Winterreise interpretation?
I mean, it's such a. Yeah, we must have performed it. I don't know, 15 times. I'm not sure, and recorded. But it's really like an opera, that piece, and that every small change of mood that happens from one performance to another will affect the next song, will affect the next thing after that. It's a big, talk about a fairy tale. It's a very simple story. I mean, he simply walks out of town and that's it. That's the end of the story. But there's such a kind of enormous, thousands of miles psychologically across during that journey. And it's in a way where you let the camera, like a director, let the camera linger on one detail, another detail, and it changes the meaning of the next thing. And with Schubert, there are things that can be very funny, but it's a particular kind of humor, rather dark, sardonic humor, and you can catch the light in it differently. And Ian always does this very spontaneously in his performances. He'll cast different lights on things. So I'm looking forward, yeah. And of course, we follow each other, I think, as we do it as well. The colours that he suggests or I might suggest and the piano. Temperature in the hall, the way people are listening, all these things can affect it as well.
It's also fun that you're playing Winterreise so close to the climate summit.
Yes, it's a sort of, yeah.
Maybe one of these years,
Yes.
Winterreise will be the only evidence that there ever was a winter.
Yes, they'll have to sort of put a note about what snow is.
Exactly. It used to be a form of water.
Yeah.
You could get cold.
Yeah.
How difficult was to leave London or Great Britain now?
How difficult
Yeah,
to leave.
to leave.
It's very nice to be back, is all I can say about that. You know, we obviously escaped the national dementia, which has taken over. I was sent to a different line, of course, from the EU. I mean, I knew I was going to have to do it, but it was a sort of walk of shame. But they were actually, everyone was lovely, so it's fine. It's nice to come here. It was nice to be in Finland for 2 weeks as well. Yeah. Well, I hope so. I don't know of any plans, but that would be very nice. Yes, we would somewhere here, Madrid. I don't know. That would be there. It is coming to Paris. I know. But that's a definite thing. And the Dante project, so it was what I was doing. It's just been a rather strange month. I've actually had 6 world premieres in less than a month, which is obviously only because of, we all know why, all the postponed trains arrived almost at once. So, and 2 of them were 2 of the ballets in the Dante project, yes, which has just come off stage.
What maybe tell us about, if you can, like nice, exciting projects coming ahead.
Yes, I have another violin piece, but very different, violin ensemble for Lucerne Festival next year. Yes, and it's everything is. I'm happy to say, smaller scale for a bit. It's chamber music and smaller scale things, because I've spent quite a long time writing enormous operas and various other ballets, and it's very nice to get back to a smaller scale. Actually, I've enjoyed that. Yeah. So, and I have a new clarinet quintet that was premiered also about 2 weeks ago. That's going to come around places with Mark Simpson playing. I'm very pleased with that piece. What else am I doing? A suite from my second opera, The Tempest. That's also violin and piano, and an orchestral one. So lots of fun things. Yeah.
It's really we were talking with Pekka before, and it's really amazing that you brought this kind of piece with such big influence from folk, and he ended up doing it, and I guess this might be like a nice flourishing relationship between you two.
Well, we've worked together along.
You did before. Okay, sorry.
There was a sort of gap, but Pekka's so multifarious. We've been composing and conducting and everything as well. So we're rather lucky to grab him. But whenever you're around, please, I'm looking forward, to doing more. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just, because we played your violin concerto in Stockholm, and that was probably the first time we worked together, and that must have been like 2008 or something.
This is that, yes, and then we did a tour, including to New York of it. And Pekka was always going to this version of the piece, especially, was always for him, and they both are. So, yeah. Yes, 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 that's right. Yeah, yes, and I think it's, I may have had the first idea for it around the time that we were doing that tour, I think. I must do another violin piece, and that was because,
Yeah, I think there was some talk of, I think you were wondering about doing something that would be related somehow to the humoresques of Sibelius.
Yeah,
That was floating around it. Maybe
yes.
that sort of evolved into.
Yes, that's right. Yes, which you introduced me to. That's right. Yes, this is all true. Yes, there's the archaeology of it.
There's the inspiration.
Which also have this folk mythical atmosphere.
How do you approach this traditional folk music inside your head to make it?
Well, I have to sort of make it my own and find out my own reactions, what it means to me, and in each case. And sometimes it can be one story, one song. Sometimes I need several. Like the last movement is built like a tapestry of several ideas to get where it needs to go. Yeah. There's a sort of dreamlike process to it as well. It has to be a subconscious, finding the paths in my subconscious in order to reach the kind of exit.
Before you were talking about obsession,
Yes.
that you need to be obsessed with an idea.
Yes. Yes.
But since you have composed so many things,
Yes.
do you have any obsession not to repeat yourself?
No.
How do you?
No, I don't. Well, there's repeating oneself is one thing, but it's not really possible to do that if you're alert, because you can revisit certain themes and certain. I mean, in fact, not just can, but you have to. I mean, it's not possible for every single piece to be nothing to do with the last one. That wouldn't make sense. That's not really how it works. But it's more a question of you can revisit a place and be in a very different way. But I have boxes, as it were, of different obsessions and things like that. But and you take what you need for each one. But each piece has different, I suppose, needs.
That can become an obsession.
Which is?
Brexit?
I think the answer with that is think as little about it as possible. I mean, no, because it's like, I always knew that it was going to be something that there's a sort of British way of saying you've done something and then actually not doing it. As like the only way we're going to survive is if we do that. That's what they're eventually doing. Right. Put everything back the way it was, quietly. Anyway, I don't know, but I'm not. Believe me, everybody was obsessed with it for years, and it's everyone's sick to the back teeth of it now.
You're going to dedicate any piece to Brexit?
I don't know. I just, I've given this piece a German title. My cello one has a French title. I just think all European languages, we should all be able to use them as we like. They're all the same peoples. So I don't know what continent the Brexit people think Britain is on. It's Europe.
Not a continent, an empire.
God, it's so embarrassing. It's very, very embarrassing. Anyway.
Infancy, when you were a child, how was music around? At home, in the school?
Yeah. My parents' record collection has a great, almost fetishistic power for me, because when your children are obsessed, but it may have even been the pictures on the records, but it was very varied. There was a lot of flamenco in it, and there was obviously jazz, folk music, classical music, opera, and I just used to have very strong preferences, I think. That's we're really talking very small there. And then there was a piano, which I used to thump around on. And I think it was always like my playground, really, music. Same must have been for you. part of being a composer. More so, my parents aren't musicians.
Yeah, my father's been really, he's tried most things you can do in music without getting into legal. Actually, he did get into legal trouble. But yeah, he was aiming to become a sailor, but jazz turned him into a musician. And
Yes.
and he just went from there.
Oh, what fun. Yes.
Yeah, but it's like the first record I ever remember hearing is Rasputin by Boney M.
You're a bit younger than me. That's that's a little bit late. Yes. But so yeah, folk music. My father loves folk music actually, and the Seegers and that sort of thing.
Right, that's fun when folk music sometimes means that, like Johnny Mitchell.
Oh yes,
and
no,
sometimes
yeah.
it's-
Well,
it's like,
it wasn't the Americans, but yes, that's right. It wasn't. Yeah, it was that sort of 1960s. Joan Baez actually having said, not the Americans, but
Exactly. No, I've had that. It's a wonderful misunderstanding to sort of crash into when you go and play folk music, and I think I'm going to play some traditional tunes from Finland, and people expect to hear Bob Dylan, early Bob Dylan. Or
Paul Robeson. That's
Exactly.
probably what I like.
Is this traditional music from England?
Oh, anywhere. A lot. Though England is an important one. I mean, the English folk tunes tend to have particularly gruesome, grisly stories. The Irish ones are mostly more poetic and a lot of yearning, a lot of broken hearts. But the English ones can be quite nasty for some reason. But I did. Also, there's a Ladino Sephardic folk music's been quite important in my world to me as well. Just that was from one record that they had, which I felt I'm still obsessed with. 45 years later.
General Mazas, the Agencia EFE, she's asking about if you could resume what means the violin concert for you as a work, and if please Ruben can translate it.
What does the violin concerto means to you? This one. I guess this one. Yeah.
Yes. Oh well, it's very. I mean, actually, although this orchestration, this concert is happening where it was always supposed to happen, and it stayed in the right place, and it's one of the we're now hitting the magic moment where things are happening as we expected them to, which it hasn't been. But even so, hearing it, because I've only just heard the whole thing, I was living with the music that I wrote last year and earlier this year on my own for a long time. It was sort of just in my head. And you remember how long that COVID period seemed to go on for a lifetime. I mean, time didn't mean anything anymore. It was like lifetimes we all went through so long. It was hard to sort of think, well, we've had 2 months, 3 months, 2 years, what has it been? So to actually be here, sitting here, and the music is now being heard in reality played by other people, really, it's a huge relief. Everything about it is a relief. So It's like the clock started again. But that's also it in some ways, having the clock stop the world, it was an opportunity for as a composer to really work in more depth, for a while. So there was that as well. So I think I suppose that means I've come out of it the whole period as a slightly changed composer, and this music is different from the music I was writing before a little bit. Yeah. It's hard for me to say, but that's what it seems to feel like.
Ho ha explicat a través una mica del context, no? de l'escriptura de la peça, en el sentit de que quan va començar... It was a long one, thank you. Quan va començar a escriure aquesta peça, doncs es va veure impactat per la pandèmia, evidentment. Aquesta peça està pensada per ser escoltada en una sala de concerts o en un enregistrament, però en qualsevol cas amb gran orquestra simfònica i amb un solista de violí com el Pekka. Però el que va passar bàsicament és que es va veure abocat al tancament i per tant sempre l'ha tingut en ment, al cap, aquesta peça, i d'alguna manera se l'ha anat imaginant, però suposo des del piano, amb la versió que té també per a reducció de piano i violí, però sempre al seu cap. I d'alguna manera sent que ha patit una transformació o forma part d'aquesta pròpia vivència, no? Aquesta peça que ara veu la llum finalment i que per primera vegada ha dit ostres, això era això, no? Era això el que volia o el que m'estava imaginant tota l'estona, però a casa en un moment de reclusió que hem estat tots. Did I do it well? I tried to do it as long as you did.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it's a very wide variety, but I think it's linked. I mean, I think there are these links, from the new piece, which is also has some of the oldest material with the folk music. Then my scandalous youth in the passat phase. I think actually I see a link with the Winterreise story, because it's very much a kind of young man, but making a big drama out of it, which is what I did about her face. And we've got the Mephistophelian side in the list, which actually I think introduces that idea of, I love that it's set in a pub, the list, that this man starts playing the violin and it turns out to be the devil. I think it's such a fantastic idea, and I love that sense you have with Liszt, that he's always breaking a rule. There's a real sort of James Bond feeling that he's like licensed to kill with Liszt, and so that should. And then the Poulenc is also a very rule-breaking, naughty 1920s piece, that says I'm going to do this just because I feel like it. So I think it should be fun for me anyway. It's a fun program, this one here.
He intentat explicar una mica tots els links que ell veu entre les diferents peces que contindran el programa de l'orquestra i el mateix Winterreise. En cada cas ha fet un link diferent. A veure si me'n recordaré tots. Ha parlat de que, d'alguna manera, el Merchantants, que és la peça aquesta que estrenarà el Pekka i que és aquest coencàrrec de l'auditori amb altres orquestres, és una peça que arremet al folk i, per tant, al tradicional, al clàssic, a l'antic i al modern. Per altra banda, Powder Her Face, la suite, Hotel Suite aquesta de l'òpera de cambra, creu que hi ha un link amb Winterreise, perquè és un home jove fent un gran dama. Després ha parlat de Poulenc, que hi ha... What did you say about Poulenc? The link was...
It's rule-breaking.
Rule-breaking. Rule-breaking, sí, que trenca una mica les normes, les regles de joc, no? I finalment, I think I talked about Hotel Suite, Poulenc.
Yes.
The Vals, the Mephisto Vals. What did you say about the Mephisto Vals?
I said that because it was like, in my piece, it's like you have this violinist who walks into a pub, basically, okay. And it's very carefully portrayed that he plays the violin in the pub, but then the dancing becomes too wild because he's the devil. So that, yeah.
Sí, que tot està linkat, perquè fins i tot amb el cas del Vals de Mephisto passa que parla d'un violinista que entra en una taverna, no? I el ball, la dansa que planteja és tan bèstia o tan agitada que s'acaba convertint, s'apropa una mica al dimoni, no? Demoníaca, una dansa demoníaca.
And then when he disappears, you hear them say, "What just happened? Who was that?" You can feel it. And this is a little bit idea of the virtuoso when Beck has plays my piece, I like that there's a sense of sometimes of kind of, what did it just do? You know, it's almost, yeah, I love that feeling of the you get with Paganini or something, that there's something superhuman, supernatural.
Parla de l'element de sorpresa també, no? Del fet de que li passa el mateix quan el Pec està tocant, o virtuosos d'aquesta talla tocant peces tan difícils com la que tocarà, que en algun moment el públic què acaba de fer, no? Què està passant? Què és això? I això passa una mica també al Vals de Mephisto.
Many folk tales have this element, you know, this person who comes in and enchants everybody.
The fairy tales.
Yeah.
De històries de fades.
Maybe, yeah.
Where do you think it's going now?
I mean, I think it's very hard for me to say it, but I've noticed there's I suppose there's more. You work more towards this, what's essential, you know, and the less the other things fall away and reveal more of the kind of core of the onion. You know, that's often when you ask about repeating yourself. I say it can be more like the different layers of an onion. Yeah, that's more what it's like. You wouldn't say an onion repeats itself.
Okay, should we call it? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.